So my first question is for Joe. Where do you get your inspiration for the creative projects that you do?
That's a good question. It varies from project to project, obviously, but I do think it's strange. There's some sort of stream of consciousness almost that exists, and when you're trying to think of an idea, or at least when I'm trying to think of an idea, I'm blanking. But I may be sitting there at night after I've gotten home from work, watching a ball game that I don't really care about, like the Brooklyn Nets and the Clippers or something. I'm just watching it. And then, like, I slowly drift off just into space. And next thing you know, you're thinking about work or you're thinking about an idea without knowing that you're thinking about it. And to me, those are when the best ideas happen because you're not trying. And I usually get on some sort of a trail. So you whip out the moleskin, you write your idea down, or you put it in your phone under your notes. And that's usually where I think I have my better ideas from.
Awesome. Chris and Andrew, you guys clearly one of your hurdles in getting your short film picked up was funding. That's why you guys were on Kickstarter. But can you talk about being so young and doing something like that? What were some other obstacles that you faced?
We talked about it a little bit in the speech, but one of the obstacles is when you're young, a lot of people don't want to work with you. They think, well, he doesn't have the experience, and what we did was we found other young people that want to do it. I was just talking with Joe backstage about getting local people who want to do this stuff involved. And then once you put out a volume of work, then more seasoned professionals are going to they're going to see your work and they'll be like, oh, these guys actually get it done. They're going to want to start working with you. And so one of our biggest obstacles was finding people who would work with us. Actors especially, when you don't have a reel to show them, they're like, I don't know if I want to put my face on something. And so we really we put out a lot of fillers to find actors. Production-wise, like I said, all of our guys were from Western, so it wasn't that hard to find. Right. But actors was pretty hard to find, and Swanson can probably tell you more about more of the production problems.
Yeah, with the budget we had, usually with the type of gear and the type of crew we had, you could maybe get a day's worth of shooting in with the type of professional setup we had. Mm-hmm. A normal budget, let's see, actually our film took 7 days to shoot in total, which any producer I've ever told that we did for their money, they're like, I have no idea how you did that. I don't see how that's possible. Normally with what the type of budget or the type of project we had, usually $100,000, $200,000 budget, and we weren't even a fraction of that. So one of the hurdles we had was logistics, and those type things was still creating an awesome project with the limited budget that we had, but we still did it. So yeah, no regrets, that's for sure.
Kate, can you talk about how you got interested in your field? I know you do a lot with animals and diseases and things like that, but oh, sorry. Do you hear me now? My question for Kate was how she got interested in the field that she's in right now. Kind of what led you to that?
Well, there's a lot of correlations between health and disease, of course. I mean, we look at, particularly because we live so closely with animals, whether we want to or not, animal health and public health are about the same. So I started out looking at nutrition, and that nutrition science is where we focus, where our company is focusing on disease. I mentioned the rapidity with which RNA viruses replicate. There are some things that your own health makes a difference in. For instance, with the flu virus and antioxidant status, particularly selenium. If your antioxidant status is poor for one reason or another, and a flu virus is replicating in you, you're going to get sicker. Or you're also going to have an impact on that virus, because when that virus replicates in a deficient individual, it's more likely to mutate, become more virulent, become a disease that becomes a worse disease than what it started out with. So those nutritional influences on both the animal health and the human health side are our emphasis.
Awesome. Zach, do you have any questions?
We've got a lot of questions so far. First, coming from Ashley White. What if you have a dream or an idea that nobody supports or encourages? Do you keep going or do you find a new one? Open to anyone.
I say, I know in our speech we talked about, any idea, go with it. But there really does have to be a point where you look at it and say, is this worth the time? That's one of the things about art and being creative is sometimes you can spend years on a project and realize that, it's not going to work. And so one of the things that we have to constantly do is evaluate ourselves and evaluate our ideas. And if you've came up with one good idea, I promise you're going to come up with another one. So I would just keep at it. And if that idea doesn't go anywhere, maybe it's time to evaluate.
I'm actually going to give the reverse side of this. So this is, coming from two different people. I have a completely different stance, and I'll give you an example as well. Does anyone know the show American Pickers? Oh, yeah, all of you people know that show. That guy shot the pilot of that with this handheld camera he bought at Best Buy. Looked terrible. Looked like something that could never be what it is now. And he went to every single network. He constantly bashed his head against the wall and said, I'm going to make this, because he was passionate about it. And sometimes it takes that passion to get it to that next point. And as you know, American Pickers, what it is now, they have a whole industry of merchandise, and of course the show is great. So, there is a certain evaluation you have to do with yourself. But then again, if you're so passionate and you're like, I know this idea will work, you go headstrong, and you don't let anybody tell you different.
I too have an opinion on that. I actually agree with both of them, which is kind of hard to do. But each idea will be different. They're both right. You have to evaluate it. You have to decide, is this something worth pursuing? But like Andrew mentioned, if it's in your heart and you want to do it, you got to do it. But I'll also say that just because somebody tells you an idea isn't good or it won't work doesn't mean that's true. Because if everybody had good ideas, then they could have good ideas. Some of my better ideas or projects we've done are when people's like, that's a horrible idea. Screw people, because half of them don't know what they're talking about. I am a firm believer, zig when everybody else is zagging. Because sometimes it's that twitch, it's that motion that sets a trend going in another direction. So don't follow crowds, don't follow people and what they are telling you to do. Be yourself, and if you believe in what you're doing, then execute it.
We've got another question. This one's for Kate from Chris Patterson. What are the innovative ideas Alltech is coming up with to combat disease?
Well, looking at nutritional kinds of changes and looking at those ways in which our population puts a squeeze on the food chain, we find that there are some nutrients that get shoved to the side. One of those might be selenium. One of those might be the form in which selenium appears. We look at the food chain, at the way nutrients are presented in the food chain naturally, and look at that. One example that you'd be familiar with, the vitamin and mineral pills that you take constantly. I mean, we're, as a culture, just big believers in taking vitamins and minerals. Look at the form on the back of those and ask yourself the question, is this the same form that's present in plants? In other words, is this the form that people or animals evolve to metabolize? Or am I just buying this and it's going straight through me? That's an important point, and that is an idea that we're pursuing in very strong ways for animal and human health.
This is for everyone. How do you encourage people to think outside the box? And that comes from Elizabeth Magaha. Sorry if I mess up names. That's going to be...
I'm sure everybody has an opinion on this. I can go first. I think it goes back to what I just briefly said and touched on, is that I don't love the phrase, think outside the box, and that may be because I get to do it every day, so yes, I never want to have the same idea that everybody else is having. We don't want the same ideas over and over. But I will say it goes back to that. Look at what everyone else is doing. Figure out a way you can improve it or change it, or how you would do it differently. And then find some awesomely creative people to surround yourself with, and then start breaking it down. And just figure out, when you surround yourself with creative people, great things happen, and it helps you see angles that you didn't see before. We were just talking about that backstage. But I think it's collaboration and being unique.
I completely agree. Collaboration is one of the greatest ways to take an idea that you have and change it into something that's completely different. Started with an idea from me. I went to Swanson. He added to it. We added more people. They added to it. So just go out there, and if you have an idea, share it and start collabing.
Yeah, with thinking outside the box, this is something a lot of people don't consciously think about, okay? If I was to say, everyone in this room, take a picture of the wood on this stage, I would not get the same picture. Every single picture would be different because every one of you have had different life experiences, different everything, okay? So, what might seem like an in-the-box idea to you isn't necessarily in the box. And then ways to kind of pull that out of your mind is to creatively challenge yourself all the time. I mean, it could be something as simple as I know something we've done before, look for repeating patterns. Take a picture of something that has a repeating pattern, such as that brick wall there. Different things like that, different creative challenges for yourself. That's one direct way I would say to get it out.
I can comment on that from the scientific ideas are the same. The collaboration is extremely important. That's been wonderful for our company. We put together different people from different disciplines, people from different countries, just changing perspectives on your idea and talking about that make a huge difference.
Next question comes from Hannah Yance. Are there any specific quotes that you individually value?
Yeah, there's a handful, but it's not necessarily a quote, but it's why not? Why not? Give me a good reason as to why not. And I'm sure you'll probably get a lot of reasons as to why not, but that's just one thing I've lived by ever since I was in high school, and you can give me a bunch of good reasons, but I'll still say, well, I don't understand why, so.
I actually have this one in my phone. And being a business owner, this kind of helps me sometimes when you get in the rut. But it says, today is your day to paint life in bold colors. Set today's rhythm with your heart drum. Walk today's march with courage. Create today as your celebration of life. So it's kind of a positive outlook on how to approach the world. And I try to, especially when I'm in the dumps, try to look at that and, get a lift from that. And that's mine.
I know I mentioned one of mine in the speech, the Jean Renoir quote about go out and just do. And I was talking with Swanson the other day because we're working on another project, and I said when you realize that art is in the doing, it's not even in the actual product, then it frees you up. It frees you up to not be about the final product anymore, but to actually just go out there and do. And you'll find that sometimes when you go out and do, like we go out and take photos all the time for inspiration. We get on Instagram and take all these photos. When you get out there and actually start doing, you'll realize that your idea starts to take shape even more. And so just get out there and do. That's the thing I encourage everybody to do.
I'll agree. Why not?
Next one comes from Ki-Hoop Yang. How do you pursue an idea enough without becoming complacent, and when do you know it's a good idea to stop pursuing that idea? Repeating one more time, how do you pursue an idea enough without becoming complacent, and then when do you know it is a good idea to stop pursuing that idea?
Again, I think that's along the lines of collaborate with other people that you trust and people you work well with. And even if it is time to give up on that idea, it may be an iteration of that idea. It may be something that is spawned off that idea. So just rely on those people that inspire you and push you.
I think a good indicator is we talked about passion, and if all of a sudden, it doesn't happen all of a sudden. If you really believe in an idea, then your passion is going to be strong for it. But if your passion wanes for an idea, I think it's time to start doing that reevaluation. If you hate the idea that you're doing now, if you wake up and you're like, man, I got to go out and do this, I think it's time to probably rethink it.
I guess I'll top this off then. I think a lot of ways to know would be to kind of get some, and this is with this whole collaboration we talk about, is sometimes get some creative feedback. You know, and a lot of times when you get feedback, people can show you a side of the idea that you didn't necessarily see. And you're like, oh man, this is not as cool as I thought it was. So, you know, that could be a way, is just creative feedback.
We've got one final question for this session, and it is from Caitlin Grant. How do you get in the mindset to come up with new ideas, and how do you channel your creative side?
That's a great question. Creativity is kind of one of those things, you're in the moment, you're living in the moment. You never know when you're going to be inspired by something. He just mentioned taking photos of things. Like that things seem to piggyback on other things, and the more you're consuming, the more you're digesting, and your brain's moving 1,000 miles a second, and you know, it's hard to stop and stay on one idea. I think you have, internally and subconsciously, you're probably telling yourself whether or not this is something other people will enjoy or this is something that you really enjoy. And it sort of comes down to that passion or something that you think can make an effect on people. And I think that's what keeps that forward momentum and progression and letting you know this is what I should go with.
One of the ways that I come up with ideas, they cut it off. Hello? Oh. One of the ways Joe talked about earlier, having a moleskin, go out and get you a notebook. You know, keep it in your back pocket, keep it in your backpack, but get you a notebook. And one of the ways that I come up with new ideas is I write down everything. I'm old school. I like writing with a pen. I just love the feel of pen on paper. But if you do it in your phone, do it in your phone. But write down all these ideas. And once a week, go back and look up all the stuff that you do. I took some acting classes when I was learning directing. And one of the things they said is write down conversations you hear. Just write them down word for word. Get an idea how people are. So write down your ideas. And at the end of the week, go through them, look at them. And sometimes they'll mesh together and make this really cool collaboration of ideas. And another thing that I do is I listen to tons of music, you know, whether it's indie or, you know, Sigur Rós and some crazy ambient stuff. I listen to tons of music because that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration from. So find something that inspires you and surround yourself by it.
Who all asked these questions? Raise your hand. These were fantastic questions. They really were. But to answer the latest question, I'm going to put this in perspective of a 24-hour day. With the creative stream, keeping that stream going, you could have your first 23 hours of that day, nothing, blank. And you're like, wow, I am useless. But then that 1 hour, and the creative juices just start flowing, and you don't stop it. And like they said, write it down. You know, get in that zone and just keep writing stuff down. And don't stop that stream until you've just basically exhausted yourself and you fall asleep and didn't even know you fell asleep. So that's what I would say.
All right. Well, that was the last question we're going to take for this session. We want to thank the Center for Gifted Studies for sponsoring this session, and also give a healthy round of applause to our presenters.